Most reptile species are really easy to keep, and I would recommend for you if you do your research. But these 5 species, I bet you'd kill if you tried to keep. Specialty animals have specialty animals. You niche down, and although I'd say that most exotic pets, specialty animals, we call them here in Canada, like, even your bearded dragons, gopher snakes, I don't know why you chose gopher snake, whatever, king snakes, bearded dragons, ball pythons, whatever, those are normal reptiles that are really easy to care for. Basically everybody and their mother could take care of a ball python. I mean, just within reason, of course. However, there are some reptiles that are really difficult to keep and require special attention. It requires you way more attention for one of these animals than it is for an entire room of really easy to keep animals like this one. So these aren't animals that you shouldn't keep. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is these are animals that if a regular keeper tried to keep them the way that they kept a ball python and they didn't go and check on them for a week and a ball python's fine, these animals would all die. They take very special care, but they make amazing pets if you are one of the dedicated few. That was a long intro. Let's just start it off. Number 5, flying snakes. Flying snakes are so freaking cool. What you might not know about flying snakes is that they don't actually fly. They don't have wings that they just sprout from, like I'm sure you actually did know that. Instead, they have ribs, like all snakes do. They flatten them out and they glide. So they kind of the same way that dudes in squirrel suits go gliding, same sort of idea, over much less distance and less high, of course. Now these snakes can fly better than flying squirrels. They can glide basically 100 meters or more sometimes. The issue is you'll never see this in captivity. They need big areas from tree to tree to go. They up, they fly. It's really cool. I've seen it in the wild. I found these ones in Thailand. Really cool. What's interesting is we looked for these flying snakes all over the place, found them up too high to get, and then one day as we were about to give up, there was one sitting on the concrete when we were eating lunch. Maybe he tried to fly from one tree to another and he missed. I don't know. But these rear fang colubrids from Southeast Asia, places like Thailand where we found them, they're gonna be cruising around in the treetops. They like it pretty high up, and their diet is really specialized, and that's why they're on the list. These snakes, not impossible to keep in captivity. I've seen them for sale, but they're for sale from really responsible importers. And by importers, I mean from Europe. They're captive bred. You just can't find them here in a specific example. And they sell them to people that they vet. They're difficult to care for because they can't just start throwing mice down their gullets and hope it's gonna be okay. It's not. It's just not what they eat in the wild. They're gonna eat some rodents, but mostly frogs, lizards, things like that. So you'll need to make sure the diets that they have in the wild, you need to replicate. They're not going to be able to switch only on rodents and do very well for very long. And that's a problem because most people don't have a bunch of feeder animals. Although this importer that I'm talking about also sells feeder crested geckos that are stillborns and stuff like that for animals just like this one. So basically what I'm saying is find a community that specializes in weird animals with weird diets, and that's how you're gonna have the best success. Number 4, Jackson's chameleons. Now I've made lists before talking about how chameleons are fragile, and it's true. However, I want to be really specific here. Jackson's chameleons, in my opinion, of the 3, veiled chameleons, panther chameleons, Jackson chameleons, are way more difficult than the other 2. Now, Jackson's chameleons are not from Madagascar, like you think most chameleons are. They're from the mainland. They are from Kenya and Tanzania. These are really cool animals that love it really high up in the mountains, and because of that, they have specific conditions. If you've ever been in the mountains, you know, during the day, it can get pretty darn warm, and at night, it gets really, really cool. Even if it's in Africa. Some of the temperatures where these guys are found in the wild will get down to almost 0 degrees Celsius. Not every night, nothing like that, but there is a considerable night drop all of the time. And some animals from areas like this don't need a night drop in order to survive. However, if you do not give a Jackson's chameleon a considerable night drop, I'm talking about in the 50s or at very least the high 60s every single night, I promise you it will eventually die of this stress. I had a very interesting conversation with my friend Bill Strand at the Chameleon Academy on a bus in Madagascar looking for other chameleons about Jackson's chameleons. because I expressed if I were to get one, that's the species that I would get. After the conversation, I decided they're not for me because even though I live in Canada and for 8 months a year, I could facilitate this no problem, in the summer months, I couldn't. He informed me that it is a stress that piles up and piles up and piles up. They can't sleep properly because they can't get to a cool enough temperature, and eventually they'll just die of exhaustion. So that's why, instead, I got a veiled chameleon. Surprise! We'll talk about that in another video if you want to see it. Veiled chameleons also not from Madagascar, by the way. They're from like Oman and Yemen and places like that. Anyway, not only that, there's some other complications with Jacksons, one being that they really don't like handling. But the difference is with veiled chameleons and panthers and lots of other chameleons that we found and handled, if you handle them and they don't like it, they'll gape their mouth at you, try to bite you. Jackson's chameleons don't. So it lulls their keepers into kind of this false sense of, oh, he likes me. No, he doesn't. He's deathly afraid of you. And people will say to me, Adam, you don't understand. Mine's different. My Jackson's chameleon, he doesn't try to get away from me. He's slow moving, and sometimes he'll even fall asleep on me. Aw, isn't that cute? No, it's not cute. You know what they're doing? They don't trust you. They're closing their eyes and saying, okay, I guess I'm as good as dead. I give up. It is the saddest thing in the world. And I'm taking this from chameleon experts. This isn't my opinion that I got out of thin air. Like the people who run the show, that's who told me this. Anyway, they look like tree triceratops. They're the coolest looking ones by far. And if I could facilitate a night drop during the warmer months in my house, I would absolutely get one. But I can't. And I think that's where most people go wrong. And that's why most people I know have had a Jackson's chameleon and don't have it anymore. Number 3, Thorny Devils. Now I know this is ridiculous. If you know anything about this really cool lizard, you're thinking, dude, nobody keeps these in captivity. Are you crazy? I don't know how, but I've seen these. This is a few years ago, probably closer to 10 years ago now, where I saw them on Kijiji available for sale. Okay? This is a place that you sell. I bought couches from there, or like, I don't know, I bought reptiles or whatever, but you buy a crested gecko. You don't buy the craziest animal ever. I've seen people post pictures of these up until, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago on Reddit, or even one on Facebook, of them having these in their possession. If you don't know, this is a very specialized animal. This is maybe one of the coolest animals ever, by the way. Super interesting. They have like a second head on their shoulders so that when a predator comes, they can kind of bow down their real head and then the predator attacks the fake one and then they get away. They have this herky-jerky movement to fool predators. Super cool. And they have this hydrophobic moisture harvesting where they can just stand in pools of water and then the water basically trickles up to their mouth. It's like the craziest thing. Also, they only eat ants, basically. I mean, there's some exceptions, but for the most part, they eat ants. There's certain species that they like to eat that you can't really find here, and they're gonna eat thousands of them a day. These guys eat ants, sleep and poop, and and breed sometimes. That's basically it. If you can't facilitate the diet, they'll die. There's only a few zoos in Australia that can keep them long term, and even then, it is reported that you can't keep them in captivity for longer than they would live in the wild, which is very rare. Most animals, it's the exact opposite of that. So it's almost like basically impossible for anybody outside of a zoo facility in Australia where you have access to these ants to keep one alive. Anyway, they're very distantly related to horned lizards, and I don't really know anyone who has horned lizards in captivity, although they would be much easier to keep, and I know in a lot of places it is legal. Yeah, don't get a thorny devil. I promise you the thing is gonna die in your care. Just don't do it. Number 2, dragon snakes. Dragon snakes are really cool to look at. I think it's a common theme. All these things are cool to look at. The problem is they have a very specialized diet. From what I understand, they only like moving water, and if it's not moving, they tend to die. Again, this is one of those animals too that's cryptic and there's very little information and it's new. All the information is new. And there is a front runner of someone who's like really doing good work, and I think they actually bred them in captivity. They might be the only ones or one of the very few. So I think it's really cool that there are people who have figured it out and cracked the code. But for most people, you get it and then it dies pretty quickly. And not only that, just the diet is difficult again. So I'll put this in there. You can't just start feeding them mice. They're gonna eat things mostly like tadpoles and frogs and fish. And most people don't really have that available to them. It has to be the right type of fish, by the way. Certain types of fish will just kill your reptile if you feed them. So there is some know-how. This is a really specialty pet. I know I used a crazy title to get you to click, But at the end of the day, this is a list of really specialty stuff that you can keep if you really know what you're doing, but don't go into it all willy-nilly like you could with a bearded dragon and it'd be fine. So as I've seen over the years of being a reptile nerd, most people I know or have seen or heard about it or read forums who have tried to keep these animals, they just don't last. They just die. They're expensive. They're of least concern, so they're not endangered. I still don't think poaching them is a great idea, or harvesting them in general, but either way, I think it's cool. They're on the list. If you want one, talk to someone who actually knows what they're doing. I have no help for you there. And let's move on to number one. Number one, blunt-headed tree snakes and slug-eating snakes. And the reason I put them together, although they're not really related, is just, I mean, their similar diet constraint is the big thing. I mean, do you have slugs that you can feed to your animals? Do you have weird dietary things that you can do for your animals with no, like most people don't? Not only that, they're very, very slender. They're very delicate. They don't like handling. And also, I mean, just in general, they're not that popular. So almost all of them that you see are from the wild. They're almost all farmed or brought in wild caught. They're gonna be full of parasites. And just in general, it is a very high mortality rate for people who try to keep slug-eating snakes and blunt-headed tree snakes. Are they cool? Yeah, they're cool. Are you gonna be able to keep them alive? Probably not, and that is not cool. So again, a specialty animal for specialty keepers only. I just wanna bring these animals up, not as a way to, oh, Adam, you're promoting them. People are gonna want them more. No. This is just things for people to look at and research. And I've been watching these videos for a long time. I never wanted to go ahead and get something that I knew was gonna die for the sake of it, like challenging the guy behind the camera who was never gonna know in the first place. Enjoy these on the internet from people who are specialized, or do your work and become a specialty person yourself. Responsible keeping. Anyway, let me know in the comment section below what you think is the hardest reptile to keep that would probably die if you tried to keep it. As always, a like and a subscribe helps this channel more than you can ever understand, and it makes Diamond happy. And Patreon, thank you guys so much. You guys get videos early, discounts on merch. I've been loving the one-on-one conversations, all that and more for as little as $1 a month. That's it. I do videos Mondays and Thursdays, so I'll see you in the next one.